welcome to this live stream. I have finally gotten another stream going, and today I'm going to hopefully have a fun experience of taking a pre-built PC from a friend that doesn't work and might have some issues, and see if I can turn it into a server and just kind of go through my troubleshooting process. And hopefully you can come along with me and see how the process goes. It's another, I think, 3 minutes until I officially said the stream would start, so I'm just going to ramble on and talk about some things and then start it soon. But if you're listening right now, if you can just let me know if the audio sounds okay, because I have a new audio setup, because I always seem to, and hopefully this mic is working correctly. And everything's working. So I haven't done a stream in a little bit, and now I'm just curious how it will work and everything. Greg Salazar. It's not me. I'm just gonna... Oh yeah, hey, it does show me live. I have another laptop here, so I'm just like double checking everything looks okay. Yeah, it looks like it's going. Awesome. Cool. Glad it's working, and I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to look at it right now. I also, just saying for the stream, so I have this computer that I'm going to be working on, and then I have a pile of parts off camera that I'm going to be pulling from and doing stuff with. I pulled a few things in, like, easy reach if I want them. Like, I think I have... Oh, yeah, I have, like, a 1650 hiding... Yeah, no, I have an RK380 here. I have, like, an M.2 drive, some other things just laying around. But I'm going to have a lot of just computer parts all laying around, and I'm gonna pull them out slowly and just kind of have fun with this system. Sometimes I think the art of just tinkering with these older systems is fun in its own, so I'm gonna just try to do that when I get started on here and play with it. Yeah, so hopefully another exciting stream, 2 minutes until it actually starts. And thanks everyone for commenting. I see all the comments and I'm really glad that it's going. It's this awkward, like, I'm starting soon moment for me. 2 minutes. I'm so excited. What else is there to ramble about before I get started? I have, oh my gosh, I have a lot of drives. Anything else to ramble with? Oh, if you're just curious, for a quick rambling, in this table behind me, which is kind of a test bench, I have a 3770K system that I use for cloning and some other things, and then I have a dual 8-core LGA 2011 system that I've been meaning to do a video on, actually. Here, I'll give you a little quick peek before I start the official stream of comparing onboard SATA to one of these little SATA cards, to an M.2 SATA card, I'm not sure exactly which controllers these use, to this HBA and a couple of HBAs, and I think it would just be fun to compare all those different cards and throw that into a video. So that's something else that's in the works as a tiny little preview, and hopefully will come out soon. I just need to ramble about it a little bit. Oh yeah, more random hardware. I have a 1650 that might also get used today. I really don't know exactly what's wrong with this system yet until I start tearing it apart. And we're going to start working on it soon. And it looks like as soon as now for the system. So it's actually 6 o'clock. The stream has started. Thanks to everyone who has joined now. And in this video, I'm going to be taking this iBuy-powered desktop that a friend gave me, said doesn't work. Try to figure it out and see what you can do with it. And I'm going to turn it and try to get it working first of all. And then play around with it as like a server, just see what I can repurpose it and use it for now, and see how well it works. So let's first take just a physical use look at this box right now. So starting with the front, there's an iBuy-powered logo. It's dusty enough that it's kind of ugly and I can't really see what's in there. It's one of these designs that I really don't like, where there's like fans that looks visible at the front but no intake vents. I don't get that design that seems to be done more and more these days, but I guess it's the trend. Moving on to the side, it looks like the tempered glass side panel definitely feels like it with the plastic still on it. And unfortunately, because it's has the plastic on it and it's kind of dusty, I can't see inside. So I'm just going to pop this side panel off. And before I do any actual troubleshooting on this system, I am going to just take a peek inside to make sure nothing's physically damaged too much before I put power into it, just in case. I see that as pretty unlikely, but I like to have a little bit of precautions. And the first thing I notice, and I like to look for in this system, is if there's like a motherboard marking. Just curious what generation I'm working with. Oh, there it is. B650M-C from ASRock. If my memory serves me right, that's LGA 1200, which I think could support 10th and 11th gen CPUs. A bit older now, but not bad chips by any means. It has this real wimpy looking heatsink on here. Says deep cool, but it looks like the cheapest thing they can get. Hopefully there's an i3 under this. I'd be very worried if they put an i9 or an i7 with this heatsink. But I don't know. And then a GPU that says RTX. So again, fairly recent. Maybe I've been in computers too long that like RTX feels recent, but I have a lot of systems that still haven't seen RTX, and realistically, even like a 2060 or something is still pretty decent. Oh, just to answer some questions, why is there so much water here? I realized I've gotten very thirsty when doing streams before and talking for 2 hours, so I like to have more water rather than less. Just in case, because I don't want to have to stop and get water if I don't have to. Moving on to the back of the system. This definitely looks like a cheaper motherboard with a lack of ports on it, with just a couple of USB ports and each single HDMI and some things. Definitely more than enough for most users, but like just the unpainted I/O shield doesn't look fancy. And you know what, just for fun, I'm going to take off the other side panel just to judge iBuyPower's ability to cable manage these systems. So if I pop off the other side panel and turn it all the way around, not bad. I mean, it's not the best, but it's all hidden. I don't mind that. Has a little, looks like RGB header going to the fans, and other than that, it's a pretty standard looking system in here. So now that nothing looks completely awry in this system to me, I'm going to start just giving it power and seeing how it acts. Unfortunately, I have two devices that are capable of taking HDMI and putting it into a stream, but due to the way OBS works on here, it actually won't let me use both at once because it thinks they're both USB video. So I guess I'm just going to try it with pointing the camera at it, unfortunately. So I'm just going to plug the system in, give it some power, get some keyboards and mice plugged in, and see how it reacts. Power switch is on, pressing the top button, and the fans are spinning up, and it looks like that might be a debug light in there. I'm not sure exactly what it is. And I don't know if you can see on my monitor, it has a little indicator there. Oh, that it's off. There we go. Wait, why is it not on? Did I tug the power cord too much? Oh my gosh, that would also cause an issue. Yeah, so it looks like my monitor's on, and it's reporting no input at all. Yeah, so it looks like it's searching. I'm almost certain this is a working monitor. And since these LEDs, oh, they're all off now. That's interesting, and the fans are running with nothing. So this gets to my next state of, oh my gosh, it's so hard to frame with everything here. This gets to my next state of troubleshooting of, I'd say, simplifying the system and starting to replace parts. Unfortunately, there's a lot of parts that could result in this sort of situation. So I'm trying to think, where do I start that's most likely? I've seen, like, playing with memory is pretty high on the list. Taking off the GPU and trying onboard on this system would be pretty high up on my let's try something list. So I'm going to start there. This system uses DDR4, which I'm lucky enough to have more of if I really need to grab it. But one thing I like to try is just taking out one stick and replugging the other stick, so I take it out and push it back in again. That way, sometimes they go awry, and super simple, maybe fixes it, maybe doesn't. Click. Flick it on, and let's take a look to see if that happens to do anything. I'm also checking all the fans. They look like everything's spinning. I think all the connectors are in, but replugging everything is not a bad place to go for a system like this. But Still doesn't look like anything. I like to give it a few more seconds because sometimes memory training can take its time. But it's getting to the point where it's long enough that it feels like it's likely not just taking out this stick of memory and reseating the other stick was the issue. So, time to flip it off once more. And I'm going to try onboard graphics. So I believe these systems, since it has a GPU output, it definitely supports onboard graphics. And LJ1200 has mini CPUs of iGPUs. The unfortunate thing with these pre-builts, and I guess Intel to a smaller extent, is a lot of those pre-built, a lot of pre-built systems will use the cheaper F CPUs that don't have onboard graphics enabled to save a few bucks. Most gamers won't notice it, but when I'm troubleshooting things like bad graphics, it's definitely a possibility. So here goes this GPU. Looks like basic little gigabyte GPU. Doesn't look exceptionally cheap though as a GPU goes. What is it? It says 2060 if I'm reading that right. Yeah, 2060. Yeah, I'm pretty certain that's a 2060. Not a bad GPU even today. Not the highest end, but not bad by any means. And maybe it'll work with the onboard graphics on here. Hopefully it doesn't have an F-series CPU and it'll work fine, but there we go. Since I have this motherboard directly in front of me, I guess I'll make a few notes on what's happening inside. One weird thing I'm just seeing on it is it has 8 SATA ports, which for a pre-built board is a lot in my opinion. Especially since at first glance, this motherboard really, this case does not have spots for 8 drives to be put in. But I guess they used the money to put it there. That's interesting. Another interesting, just purely side note I've had when I get bored and look up all of the like motherboard chipset specs is I think Intel actually in the last couple gens went from I think like 6 SATA ports on their chipsets to 8. Which was a bit odd to me with how NVMe drives are getting more and more popular. It seems odd they use a little bit of die space to support more SATA drives, but I guess that's what they wanted to do. They must have statistics on people who use how many SATA drives people use and how much die space it uses, but it seems fine. So right now, again, onboard graphics I'm set up to use. Nothing seems to be reacting. The fans are spinning and it's going. Someone actually made a comment about one of those power supply testers and trying out one of those. And I think I have like a basic one where I have some that short the power supplies. And I've seen the ones that tell you the voltages. And those can be fine for just making sure it works. The problem is I've seen this category of power supplies a few times where it's good enough to essentially give voltage on all the rails. But the power is bad enough that it won't cause systems to have issues or they'll crash or not boot or something else. And it's one of those, if you've looked at like LTT Labs has been talking about it a bit, I forget the name of the place who has really good PSU testers in the back. It's why you need all those fancy load things because zero load on a power supply for a computer kind of doesn't matter. It's the max load that matters, or like moderate load, because your motherboard almost never pulls zero load, so that voltage doesn't matter. But also, that's so much more expensive than essentially a basic multimeter would, so I get why a lot of people can't just have those laying around. So right now I have this system, onboard graphics doesn't seem to be working, and it's not reacting at all. What my next thought is to start just yanking all the ports on this motherboard that aren't needed. There's sometimes a chance maybe something shorted or something else, and I just don't see the point of having all these different connectors. So for example, fan headers, RGB headers on this motherboard, front panel headers, sometimes they act weird, and it's not needed for a basic boot up, so I'm just gonna unplug everything at this point, because I'm unsure. And the thing with working on these systems, at least unless someone has an awesome troubleshooting ability, is there's like a half dozen parts that are all needed to work correctly to boot, like the power supply, the RAM, the CPU, the motherboard, and I just have to kind of guess and do it. And like from my experience, like RAM is easy to replace and relatively failure prone compared to like a CPU, which is harder to replace, doesn't fail that often, but I'm just kind of guessing. And I think unplugging connectors is relatively fast and might slightly help with some weird issues. On the other notes, that one thing I really like that the iBuyPower has done that I wish all the companies would have a standard for, single header for the front panels. It's just a single block that plugs in. So many motherboards use the same pinout, but they don't standardize on it, and it just annoys me that it's like, oh, we have to like guess on it, and like 90-some% from my experience have the same pinout, which I don't like. So yeah, I've unplugged like front panel headers, everything essentially except power going into this motherboard. Flip it on, press the power button again. Wait a sec, because it was off and it takes a sec. Oh yeah, the power button doesn't work because I unplugged it. So let's short off the pin. There it goes again. So just CPU fan is spinning right now. The hard drive's spinning up, but it's not plugged into the board, so it just sits there. And from the looks of things, it looks like the front panel lights turn on for a sec and the little diagnostics turn off. No output. So at this point, I'm thinking, could be power supply, could be motherboard, could be RAM. The other thought is maybe it doesn't have onboard graphics, and it's one of those F CPUs, which I know a lot of these systems had. So I can either tear it apart, look at the CPU, or I can just toss in a GPU that I have laying around for testing. So let's just toss in a 1650 and see if it acts. Yeah, that's a lot faster than swapping power supplies, so I'm just going to give that a shot right now and see if it happens to give me any display at this moment. So that's all pushed and clicked in. Plugged in the graphics. Shorted out the pins. And yeah, the fan's turning on. It's doing the same thing with what looks like diagnostic LEDs, but annoyingly enough, they're so bright I can't actually read the silkscreen text on it nearby that tells me anything about it. So the GPU fans is spinning. It doesn't need... Actually, it's not spinning, which is interesting. Oh, I really thought it was. Huh. Same thing, no result. So, maybe it's a bad power supply. As I was talking about earlier, I know these systems are known for using bad power supplies, and there's plenty of power supplies that can spin fans and look like they're working, but not doing that right now. So I'm going to flip it off and play with that. But thanks for the comment. I'm going to reset the CMOS. From what I can see on this board, there's no actual jumper. There's just two pins that I think it's these that say reset CMOS under it. One other just interesting thing I want to note with this board is that most of these motherboards use a little button cell battery to hold the time, but smaller ones, I don't have an ITX board laying around right here as an example, use like essentially like a little plastic wrapped one with a cable. This one uses the cable, which I just find odd for a low-end board that is MATX. So it actually seems to have enough die space or like board space to put the button cell battery on the board, and it's interesting they chose not to. One other just interesting thing about this board before I fix it or continue working on that is it has physical 16x slots for all the ports, but it looks like it's a 16x on the top and then 1x for everything else. It's just odd. I don't see that often, and it's interesting they chose to do that. I can't imagine that's cheaper. And I don't think pre-built buyers buy it because of that, but I guess that's their choice. So I'm going to just try resetting CMOS because that's really easy. Looks like two pins, short out the screwdriver. I don't see any button on the back, and this connector doesn't tug out easily, and I don't want to break it. So I'm just going to hold these pins, and I'm guessing I did it. So flip on power again, do it here. Now, as I'm seeing in the comments right now, unplugging the fan header because these can short out. I've unplugged all the fan pins on this board. So currently the only thing plugged into this board at this moment is the power going to the power supply, the CPU fan header, which I really doubt is causing these issues, especially since it is spinning, and then my external ports. So it's possible that could be causing the issues, and it is connected to the power supply. Seems unlikely again. I don't have known good RAM. I'm just using one stick that came with this system. I can swap it out to the other one in a sec to try that. I'm almost certain the 1650 is good. It was good the last time I used it, but I haven't tried it super recently, so I'm going to take a look at that. Now, this system did do a thing where it like seems to have power cycled and turned back on, and I see I have two lights on for boot and VGA. I think the GPU in it is good, but just... I mean, I could just try a different power supply, but since it says that, I might as well try a different VGA card. And I'm not sure why it says boot, because my interpretation is typically I should get display out no matter what the boot drive says, but just in case it has an M.2 drive on the board, I'm going to take that off. I have seen plenty of odd issues. I've seen plenty of odd issues on systems where, like, an SSD isn't completely dead, where it doesn't respond at all, but it isn't working, and it'll, like, say, hey, what are you doing, SSD? And the SSD doesn't reply, and it just stalls the system. So it could possibly be that, so I'm just going to take that out just in case I forgot it when I was going through everything else. These M.2 drives make it so easy to miss things. I'm just going to try it again, powering it on right now. Come on, let's go. Someone made a fan. Is the CPU fan plugged in? Yes, it is. Oh, it's going to be hard to turn this again. But yeah, it's plugged in. It's spinning right now. I could unplug it. I think the chance that it's keeping the system from booting is very low. And I'd prefer to not run this CPU fanless on this tiny heatsink when it is pulling a little bit of power, just to be on the safe side. It is very odd to me that my 1650 fan is not spinning. To my knowledge, they almost always spin at boot up, but it is a bit warm. So just because I can do it super quickly, I'm going to swap in an A380 GPU that I have laying around that should also, again, be a... I hate to say known good, but working the last time I used it. So I'm going to just slop this in here and see what it says. I keep getting comments about the fan hub, and while it is not plugged into the motherboard, it is plugged into the power supply. My initial gut is the chance that that's causing it not to boot is low, but it's also not that hard to unplug it and keep it from working at all. The only thing that annoys me with how these fan hubs work is it looks like this connector that goes to the power supply is soldered in, so I have to find out where it is in the pile of connections that are conveniently all zip tied together. And again, I guess hard drive. How hard is it to pull out the hard drive? Just for... Nope, it doesn't come out super easily. So, there we go. And from my first glance looking at this system, it hasn't been tinkered with too much from what I see, but I don't know. The other approach to troubleshooting I could do is the whole completely take it apart and then do it, but often I try not to because I think I am going to be, oh, it's going to be some easy fix. I'm just going to reseat the RAM or something, and I don't have to fully tear it apart. And then what happens is I effectively fully tear it apart just in multiple steps. So it's essentially, it's fully tearing apart the system, but it's in the case, so it's harder. So let's see what this does right now with an ARC A380. The fans tried to spin, but aren't still, which is interesting. And it's not booting up. So at this point, I am going to just say, let's take this system all the way apart, because it's not easily turning on. And from what I'm seeing, it's likely, again, RAM, power supply, motherboard, or CPU. So I'm going to fully take the system out. I have a known good power supply sitting on the floor near me that I'm going to pull from. I have other DDR4 RAM that works. Unfortunately, I don't have any 10th or 11th gen CPUs laying around, I think. So I'm going to have to just assume that it's either a dead combo or that it's a dead combination of CPU and motherboard, or it's and most likely it would be a dead motherboard, because that happens a lot more often, but I've been burned assuming it's motherboard before, and that's why I have a 9400 laying around right now, because I ended up buying an extra one before I needed it. Yeah, everyone says it's power supply. That's probably very likely. These systems are really known for putting cheap power supplies in it. Maybe I shouldn't have hesitated, but it's one of the more annoying things, in my opinion, to replace, so I'm going to go swap it in right now once I pull this board out of the case, because my other gut is I might as well just rebuild the system better if I'm going to take it apart and work on it. So just a couple more screws to get the motherboard out. and then I get to use my test power supply. The other thing I wish I had that I unfortunately don't have is a better cooler. I feel like the CPU really deserves, I guess it depends on what it is, a better cooler than a very cheap flower cooler they included. Yeah, these pre-built systems, they look nice. They have tempered glass, they have RGB, they have a reasonably nice CPU and GPU, and everything else is typically about the cheapest you can get away with. And it's often fine, but I don't recommend it. Yeah, I don't know. The argument is, like, they aren't great systems, but the other thing is, like, the friend's trying to, like, try to get a few bucks selling it, and I was like, sure, I'll help ya. And these are definitely, while it's not the best hardware by any means, it's definitely worth trying to resell versus just toss it. Like, 2060 class hardware is still worth a decent amount these days. Yeah, I could also just put a power supply in it. All I do need is the 8-pin and the 24-pin. And, oh, yeah. The problem with these troubleshooting things is I always go like, oh, I'll try some way. And then I read the comments. I'm like, yeah, that was probably a better idea from the beginning. And it's not a bad idea. Ooh, come on. Oh, darn it, the Wi-Fi antennas. It is nice a lot of boards have Wi-Fi, though. So I don't have to futz around with adding a card for a lot of people who just want Wi-Fi and expect it in every system. But here's the board. Micro ATX. It's not the cheapest board with like 4 memory slots and has heat sinks on VRMs and on the VRMs, but it's certainly not a premium board by any means, I would say. Feels like a pre-built special, and that's what it is. I am curious how much the system would have costed new. But let's give it another shot on the test bench. Oh, that's annoying. It took off one of the standoffs. I always hate how sometimes the screws take the I did that. Take the standoffs with them. So I'm going to hop off screen for a sec and get a toolkit with a screwdriver and my dummy power supply. So I have a known good power supply. I think I stole it from another system that I tore apart. It's a lower end Sonic from a few years ago. It works to my knowledge. And then here's my iFixit set with a hex driver so I can pull off that standoff. Is it bowed? No, not really. The only other just odd thing to me on this board is they put so much work into making it black and RGB, and then they just put this cable on here. It's just a rainbow cable to the CPU cooler. It's fine, but yeah. So power supply replacement. So swapping this. Oh, come on. I don't technically need to do this, but I really hate it when it steals the standoffs. Oh, come on. I'm gonna swap this out. I really should have checked on that power supply first, but sometimes I go down the wrong route. Oh, come on. Am I just gonna ignore this? There it goes. Cool. Cool. I got that standoff off. Here is my good power supply that I'm going to be using and trying. And yeah, sometimes I get burned by power supplies, and it's a super easy power supply swap. Sometimes it turns out to be something else, and maybe I waited too long before guessing it was the power supply and doing this. I also thought it'd be just fun to tear it all apart and see everything that's inside of it. I'm going to need 1 stick of RAM at least, and I can go grab another DDR4 stick if I really need to. And where's my 8-pin? Here we go. And then HDMI for display. So let's see if this wants to turn on. Plugged in. My new power supply's on. Short off the start pins. There we go. There's the little red lights that hopefully tell me what's going on. Seem to be doing the same thing, and it's staying on. Boot and VGA are lit up. I'm just going to give it a few more seconds because sometimes it takes some time to do some things, and I'll see what it does. So still no output. I'm still maybe in the mindset that it could possibly be a F-series CPU. So I'm going to turn it off again, especially since the boot and VGA ones are lit up, and try it with my 1650 to see if that gets something on the display. So flip this on. Same thing again. Come on. There we go. Yeah, you're probably right about the power supply because I got this fan spinning now on the 1650. Come on. Please be the power supply. Fan turns off, but still nothing on the monitor. If that... please don't tell me that's what I thought it was. Come on. No, monitor going to sleep. Okay. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to try RAM another slot. I believe the farthest away is the typically single DIMM one. We're going to try closest. Most motherboards now I think they work with any slot if you're using a single stick. And I got other RAM to try too. Interesting. At this point, I want to pull out my other system that I know is good and uses DDR4 to play with that RAM. So GPU fans spinning. The little diagnostic ones are bouncing around. It's on boot and VJ. Fans. Hey, there we go. Okay, so now I have something working. Oh, the reflections on this monitor aren't great. So it says, yeah, UEFI default's not loaded. And I can start actually playing with this system now that I have some level of working on it. Oh, come on. Here's my keyboard. And let's get into the BIOS on this system. Oh, that's just continue. Okay. Cool. So I'm in the BIOS now. It's awesome that it's working right now, and I'm just going to read this because it's probably going to be easier, especially since it's focused on my face, not up here. Single stick of 8 gig RAM, and it's an i7 11700F. It's not the heatsink I'd like to see on an 11700F. But I mean, it technically works. I'm now curious how hot it would run under load. Sorting my 1650, and now I kind of want to play around with stuff to see what it can be working at. The other thing is I'm almost certain these are faster sticks. Yep, these are 3000 DDR4 sticks, so yeah, they're not running at their XMP profiles, but that's kind of to be expected. And then I can kind of work on trying to figure out what else is working on this system and hopefully get everything I can back working into as close as I can as a complete system, so I'm not replacing more than I need to. Actually, I can either do that and try to put everything I can, or what I can try doing is I can try just like throwing an OS on the system to see if it's like kind of working. I'm tempted to toss, I guess I could toss any OS on it just to see what is it happy with and what is it at work with. Now, the one credit I do want to give to iBuyPower and like the similar companies to them that make pre-builts is it's a relatively standard MATX board and ATX case, compared to like Dell, which is like, no standard power connectors and screw layouts and other things, which is quite annoying at times. But since I want to play with things a little bit more, you know, I'm going to start putting in some of their own original hardware. So I'm going to try putting in this GPU, the 2060, and just see if it happens to come alive in here, because if it's the power supply, that GPU likely is good. And that GPU is not the best thing by any means, but not a bad chip today, and definitely worth something. Here it goes. Here, putting in the HDMI, and finding this power supply's connectors. Now, I think this is a 430 watt power supply, which is not probably fully optimal for a system like this, but it should be more than enough to get it to post and start working. So I'm not super worried. Why is it flashing on stream? That's interesting in OBS. It flashed some more. That's still very interesting. Let me know if you see the stream flashing, because I'm seeing OBS's window flash occasionally, and I'm worried about it. Hello, Dweller. Glad to see people joining the stream and liking it. Oh, that's flashing, and that worries me. But it's working with the 2060. That's nice that the GPU works, because it's one of the most valuable parts. Ooh, that really worries me how this stream's flashing black occasionally. Oh, now I'm troubleshooting the stream and my computer. I'm not super paying attention to my camera, but it's not seeming to be flashing on its internal screen, so it's really worrying me. I don't know. Okay, that's annoying. If it happens again, I'm going to start troubleshooting that. But it is working with the 2060, so at least all of these parts are working. And whoever was saying it's likely power supply was right. They are known for putting cheap power supplies in these systems. I should have taken a look at that quite a bit earlier. And you know what? Out of curiosity, I'm going to go rip that power supply out of that system just to be curious what happened again. Oh, darn, it happened again. Oh, so now I'm troubleshooting my stream as well as a computer. That's awesome. I guess I need to just try replugging HDMI connectors and seeing if that happens to make the stream more reliable. I don't know what else it could be. My capture card getting hot. It's been running for a little bit. Yeah, ooh, that's hot. Oh, darn it. I don't really know. I don't have a fan. I'm going to turn the AC on. Sorry if the noise is annoying. Hopefully the noise isn't a big issue, but I just kicked the AC on because I wouldn't be surprised if my little cheap USB capture card is getting unhappy. I have one of those like $20 USB-C capture cards, and they're not great. I'm surprised they actually work at all, and the quality's fine for 1080p. Looking really closely at the details, I think it's using MJPEG compression because I can see those macro blocks saying the same spec and look very JPEG-like. Yeah. So yeah, I also saw the comment from Ivan. I played with the RAM slot and I played with the power supply. Those are two other possibilities. I should really do one thing at a time, but then it's kind of like I've changed multiple things. That's the annoying part with trouble like this. Maybe it was multiple broken things. Maybe it's that. But I'm going to actually try now to get the power supply out of this case and see what they put in here. I mean, power supplies, yeah, there's a lot of... They're known for putting cheap ones in because they don't affect performance really at all. Yeah, I'm really curious what they put in. I'm assuming you can't see the label. Yeah, there's no label on it, and there's nothing in the case. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, or I've seen some pre-builts where they don't even bother with, like, the black painted ones to save, like, just the buck for painting. So it looks like this is... And yeah, this has active PFC, too. It doesn't have a 120/240 switch. So it's probably somewhat okay as far as power supply. It's not the worst, though. That's what I was saying. And also, looking at the dust on this case, it's not awful, but it definitely wasn't the best maintained system out there. Is this... Yeah, there should be no cables. Oh, it's all zip tied in. Darn, that's annoying. Okay, you probably can see the label. High power, 80 plus gold. That's kind of no-name looking. Single rail, 600 watts. Yeah, all available on the 12-volt rail. That's fine, 80 plus gold. I mean, nothing immediately yells this is awful. Looking inside, it's hard to judge build quality, but it has... I've seen power supplies with a whole lot less components. So, it's probably not the worst. Do I want to start cutting all these zip ties? Yeah, I might as well. I'll probably be rerunning cables anyways, so I'm going to do that. And also, because I'm really curious about storage, I'm very curious what drive they put in this system. Mechanical hard drive. One note I like to have is that whenever I see these thin hard drives, it's probably hard to see on video, but it's thinner than a normal 3.5-inch drive can be. It normally means it's a low capacity budget drive because that generally means it's a low capacity budget drive. So because the higher capacity drives use the full space available to them to fit more platters, and these mean dense platters, but you didn't buy the full capacity. Oh, come on. Now if we go connector. That should be, I do not have the right wire cutter for this laying around here. Oh, please don't insult my zip tie cutting skills. I know it's bad. Yeah, there we go. Hopefully that gets the 24 pin out, and I think, oh, there's 2 more zip ties on it. If anyone knows anything about this high power brand of power supplies, let me know. I don't keep up with every model of power supply. It's definitely not a name brand, but it could be OEM'd by one for I Buy Power. But it doesn't have any immediate signs that it's a complete dud to me. Let me know if you see some though. I mean, if it was the premium power supply, they'd probably get a name brand because that looks better, I'd guess, for the pre-builts. But I guess if someone wants to, if you could Google and check if this high power 600 actually is 80 plus gold. Because I know you can, I think there was a website that lists all the power supplies that have, like, the gold ratings, and some will just lie, and I'm curious if this is one of them. But, like, I think it takes a little bit of money to get the gold rating. I bought power supplies that say things like 80% ready or something, where it's like, it's probably 80% efficient these days, but we didn't want to pay the money to get the label on it, which is like... doesn't necessarily mean it's a dud power supply, but if you're saving money there, I worry about where else you'll be saving it. Taking up. That's interesting. There's 2 screws holding in the hard drive, and one was on the far end on this side, and one's on the middle. I mean, like, I've done that a lot, but, like, I expect the pre-built companies to do it the right way. I don't know. Maybe I'm picky, but I feel like put 4 screws in. They come with the screws in the case. Oh, I guess it's I Buy Power. Oh, Seagate Barracuda Compute. This is likely a 1 terabyte SMR drive. Probably about as bad as you get for a current drive. I think they still build this ST1000 DM010 model. And the date code. Do they have a date code? I'm curious what it is. Yeah. 18th of February 2022. Because the screws are weird, I wouldn't be surprised if someone added this to the system after it was originally made, but it could also be in the era. I'm just trying to think, 11th gen, 2060, 20 late, that would be early 2022 is possible. It could have been like a cheaper system that was trying to use the older gen parts to save a buck, which happens a lot, but could also not be. So, I'm curious if anyone... It's probably not a good resource to find out exactly when all these systems were built. But there we go. Barine Joker, I'm glad... or Leviant Links, yeah, I'm glad you guys learned from all my videos. I'm sorry I've been lacking on some of the Proxmox videos. Like I've been saying, I've been wanting to do cluster videos and other experimentation videos that I've been planning to do for a while. But unfortunately... I've been packing my schedule. I keep telling myself I will have more time soon to make videos, and I'm really trying to do that over this summer. And hopefully that will be the case. These are interesting feeling cables, but, I mean, they're fine, I guess. I don't know if it's just dirty, or they tried to save a buck on, like, thin or cheap plastic cables. So, just to try again, maybe it was memory positioning. Here is the original power supply, trying it on the test bench and giving it a shot. And plugging in power and HDMI should be everything I need to make this system work. Yeah. Let's see if this system wants to turn on with this config. I'm just curious. Okay, so it turns on. All the fans are spinning like it originally was. And the little lights on the motherboard are bouncing around. Yep, there you go. See little red lights turned off. Still turns on. Interesting. So, I guess that implies power supply, motherboard, and GPU are good. It could be something in the case. Could be shorting off or something really odd. Could be SSD, could be RAM. So I'm going to actually, I don't even remember which stick was in which slot, but I'm going to put them back in the two slots they originally came from, which I think is the recommended slots, which is A2 and B2. Farthest away from the CPU, skip one, and then that one. I'm almost in the correct ones for this motherboard, and that's how iBuyPower had it set up. I will give them credit, though. Having a reasonable RAM config, though, is nice. And exact same result. We have a different LED on, but sometimes they change. I'm just trying to, like, the LEDs are so bright that, nope, it's bouncing around. Same screen. Okay, so original memory config worked. And let me just take a look at this screen to see if right now, what's going on here. Nope, it works. And 16 gigs of RAM. Looks like the correct slots. It's running at 2133, but it recognizes that profile. Someone asked me, Vault Dweller, is it possible to repaste a HP FLR 560? I'm not familiar with that system off the top of my head. Oh, it's a 10 gig NIC, it looks like. So my experience is you can try it. Unfortunately, these often don't have good temp sensors, so you can really tell how much repasting helps. It is kind of a similar style of card where it has, like, it's a PCIe card with a similar heatsink design. From what I have seen, often these don't use, like, CPU thermal paste, or it comes as a liquid. It has, like, some sort of pad on there. So I would just be very careful that it's thick enough, because if you just repaste it and put like a liquid in that's not enough to keep the distance, it could be much worse when it comes to temps. I would just be careful if that has, like, a gap or something, or if it has any sort of, like, pad that adds thickness, compared to CPUs where they're designed to have pressure to essentially squeeze out the thermal paste. Sometimes for systems like those, I just am extra careful when it comes to repasting it when it has, like, some sort of thermal pads or anything like that. Yeah, another weird thing I've had, I've worked on a couple of these iBuyPower systems for friends in the past, and these are often not standard boards that you can buy from the OEMs. These are like special models for, like, iBuyPower, and they just put more, typically, like, RGB LED headers on them, and cheap out a little bit on some other parts. I guess they're fine, but the biggest annoyance to me is you can't use a normal BIOS, so you have to, like, hunt down a lot harder for the BIOSes. I mean, for most systems, an updated BIOS doesn't really matter, but it's really annoying if they don't get features that, like, the consumer version of the board, which is otherwise very similar, would get. So I could take this system and go run benchmarks on it and push it to its limits to make sure it works right. So the next thing I am tempted to do is to put the original SSD on it and see how that works on this system. See if it maybe boots into an OS or does anything, and how that works. So it looks like this is an ADATA SSD. It's a Swordfish 500 gig. Nothing super exciting about it. The only thing is, you probably can't see this on video, it looks like it has NAND chips on both sides, which for a 500 gig drive, even a couple years ago, seems very weird to me. Because to my knowledge, back then, they had big enough chips so you could do it with one-sided SSDs. And even now, like, looking at, here's a 1 tera SN770, that's one chip for 1 tera, so having 8 chips for 500 gigs seems a little unusual for NAND. Possible, though. I talked to the person who had this system. They said no important data, so I'm just gonna wipe it and not show any data on the system if there's any OS on it. But let's just see what it happens to do. And put that SSD back in it. I'm actually curious how this board's wired up. I'm guessing since it's a 500 series, this SSD runs off the CPU PCIe lanes. Because LGA 1200 was weird, where 10th gen, I think, didn't have the 4 lanes from the CPU for M.2 SSD, but 11th gen did, and it's just odd that there's a lot of motherboards that that had a slot that couldn't be used because you used like the 10 core 10th gen pits because they were kind of better in some ways. And then, yeah, I actually have like Dell systems. I have Dell systems that are like odd enough. I have Dell systems that I got like pre-built ones or used them for work systems that were odd enough where they, I've used Dell pre-built systems for like work things where they were like 11th gen capable, but they put 10th gen in to save a buck, and they didn't solder on that M.2 connector, so it has one M.2 slot. And it's like, these aren't super cheap Optiplex systems, but that's annoying. So let's see, does it recognize my SSD? Yep, 8 Swordfish SSD. So at this point, I might as well just try to put an OS on it. I believe I have my little handy, bootable drive here. I've owned one of these for a while, and it's just one of these virtual CD Blu-ray drive things. So you plug it in, you pick which disc you want, and you can boot from it. It's kind of like, oh, I forget the name of that project, but you can load in multiple ISOs on one USB and boot from it in a menu. It's just done on hardware. I've just generally been quite happy about... I push Control Delete on the wrong keyboard. Oops. I've just generally been happy that it works, and I've been happy I bought that a while ago. Oh yeah, the keyboard's not plugged in. Ventor, yep, that's the name. Awesome tool, really nice. I love it for this sort of like testing thing where I'm playing with a lot of different systems. And it's really hard to like keep a pile of USB drives with like Windows and Linux and other Linux distros and Proxmox and all these different things and remember which ones they were and keep them updated. And it's a lot easier to have it on one disk and I can just copy and paste it. So, from the initial looks on the system, I am UEFI, external SSD, and CD-ROM. Cool. Which OS do I want? You know what? I haven't used Ubuntu in a while. I have it loaded on here. Does anyone want a specific OS for testing? Let me know and I'll try to use it. But I think I have Debian, Fedora, Windows 11 and 10. I even have Proxmox on it, but I just want something with a GUI for quick testing of this hardware to make sure nothing weird's going on. You know what? I'm going to just try Fedora. You know, I'm going to use Fedora. I haven't used Fedora in a while. Picking a Linux distro, I sometimes feels like an example of more options almost makes it harder. Because it's like, which one do I pick? There's so many pretty good options and all kind of close stuff. They all solve similar problems. So, virtual CD-ROM. Oh, what? Boot option restoration. This is complaining about secure boot. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, and that's another point. The 500 gig SATA SSDs with Ventor, they boot so much faster. This is essentially a SATA SSD in here too. I've used cheap USB sticks. It takes a while, and when I work with a lot of systems, it's like worth my time to like actually boot from fast media compared to having to do a slow one. I'm near the new local micro center, and they gave the 128 gig SSDs at a USB sticks to everyone. And while it's great to have a 128 gig USB stick, I think it's like sustained sequential writes was like 3 megabytes per second, which is like, that's slow. I'm going to go turn off secure boot on this system. Yeah, there we go, disabled. Yep, cool. That should let it boot into Linux. I'm guessing that's the issue, why it was complaining with that screen, but I might be wrong. Yeah, it's odd when like, like DVDs are faster than those slow CD drive, slow flash drives. It's like, these high... Why is it doing that? I've gotten similar screens of secure boot, but now that's no longer an issue. It could be something with this drive it's not happy with, and I have to make it. Could it be just Fedora? Yeah, okay. So there it goes. Why did I pick the test option and kill time? I don't know. But yeah, the interesting thing with this is now that we have super fast NAND flash, the like bottom tier for speed also seems to almost be getting bigger. So I'm seeing more and more like, oh, it's a 2 tera drive, it's pretty cheap, and it's sustained, right? If you've already written data on it, is like 20 megs a second. It's like, I mean, there's uses where that's nice, I guess, but wow, it can really slow you down if you're giving it the wrong workload. The other nice thing, I guess nice is a weird word to say for it, is a weird word to say for it with the 2060 is it's old enough that like the drivers, open source drivers for NVIDIA stuff just works compared to like a 50 series where it has other issues. So I could install it on here just for fun. I might test the internal SSD just for fun and see what's going on. 50 characters only put a question in the chat of what's my recommendation for reasonably priced M.2 for OS drives. Some people might have other opinions. My general mindset is if you're using it for a basic OS drive or I'm running Windows or Linux on it, I might be occasionally updating. The DRAM-less drives are fine. Modern DRAM-less controllers are pretty performant, and typically those applications don't need a ton of performance. So I'm fine with like the WD Blues, the like pretty much I'd say stick with kind of the budget tier of the name brand. So like the WD Blues, the P3 Plus drives and P3s are generally fine. Like I guess Samsung's a little bit more, but I think they had like a 970 was like their budget drive a bit ago. Oh, I think no the 990 EVO, but it's still not super cheap. I think Solidigm makes some pretty decent stuff. That's what I think used to be Intel's NAND division for budget things. I've worked with a good amount of these budget NVMe drives in my personal desktops. They're generally fine for performance, and it's relatively hard. Now, if you're running VMs or working with huge files, get the premium drives, but I think for a lot of people, it's not worth buying premium drives. Yeah, and unfortunately, as much as I'd like to say buy brand here because they're awesome, Intel's been sold off to Solidigm. They were generally pretty good, but yeah, now they're sold off. They're probably fine though. They've also, Intel drives really like to rely on the chipsets on the board for their like RST features, which I just don't love dealing with, especially in Linux. Samsung's made some duds that have had issues that kind of scares me off. Crucial's generally been fine. They've of course had issues. So since I can't name a single brand that has never had an issue, I'm like, all the big ones are fine and just keep it safe. Vault Dweller put in a comment, can I use the K4000 in Proxmox for NVENC? Is the Linux kernel still supported or not? Actually, if you want to try that, I legitimately could right now. I don't have a K4000, I have a 760, and I believe that will work the same as it's the same Pascal Kepler. No, yeah, that would be, I believe, let me Google this, but I believe Kepler is 600 and 700 VOEs, except for the 750 and 7050 Ti. Yep, it is. Now, to my knowledge, what's been happening is NVIDIA stopped supporting those chips a while ago, and software like OBS, which I'm using right now, has decided to either add support to not support it or just not work with the older drivers, and I don't do it. I might be wrong, but I believe the drivers still install, but they might have issues. Let me actually just go and grab my 760 and we'll play with it for a bit, in a little bit. Let me just get this system working on here. So when I play with the system a little bit, I'm going to do sudo -s because I want to run stuff as an admin. LSB okay to see my drive. Actually, let me just run, do I have smart mon tools? No, I don't. Okay, I'm going to grab the network for the system so I can start playing with things on here. And then, okay, okay, cool. Smart Control is on here. I just put the package name, not the program name. x/dev/NVMe 0 and 1. One thing I am just personally curious about is what is this drive up to, and how does it say? So if I'm just looking through a drive super quickly, I typically look, NVMe drives are completely different. The overall pass, if the drive says it's bad, it's probably bad. And total amount of data written. So it says 5.7 read, 7.12 written. It looks like available spare. That looks very low. 7% used, which makes me think it has like 80 terabytes written, which is very low for a 500 gig drive, I feel like. So it's probably a very low end drive. Maybe they were just trying to use 8 cheap NAND chips with no DRAM. It's possible. And then the power on hours is just one thing, mostly out of curiosity. Power on hours 521. Yeah, this system's been barely used. Now, yeah. Now, when it comes to using iGPUs and graphics cards on these systems, The unfortunate part is this has an 11700F. So LS CPU, if I look at it right now, yep, 1100F. So I don't even have the iGPU to use on this system. And unfortunately, these iGPUs are pretty good. They can handle a lot of streams at the same time. They can support quite a few of the formats you want. I believe, I think these have pretty decent H.265 support on them, but they're a little bit too new for, I think they probably have VP9 decode, but no AV1 support. But for most home people's needs, that's going to be fine. And some people might disagree. I think for home users, it's probably not worth it to upgrade to AV1 unless you have a specific need. Maybe I'm spoiled by unlimited mobile data, but like a little bit higher bitrate streams on the go isn't a big issue. And if I'm within my own home, a bit more data for H.264 to have the same quality as AV1 is fine for me. But if you are trying to like get the most out of your mobile streams or limited upload bandwidth, AV1's nice. But otherwise, if you're streaming within the home, transcode to H.264. I don't think you really need to. Yeah, so that's the unfortunate part. I don't even have an iGPU. Well, it has one. It's just been disabled. Vault Dweller, another question. NVMe low-level formatting for 4K sectors. Is it worth it? I haven't done specific tests on this. My general gut is if you have a system that's otherwise working fine, it's probably not worth it to copy your data off and reformat it for slightly better performance. I think the worry is if it's misaligned, you're effectively writing to more sectors than you'd have to. I would just say if you're going to format it anyways, set it up right the next time, but I wouldn't bother reformatting it if your system otherwise works fine. Generally, from what I've seen, it's not a huge jump, and generally these drives have enough performance where you can not optimally use it, but off the top of my head, that's just what I'm thinking. Cool, so just for fun, I'm going to do DNF install s-tui, which is a fun little program on Linux, stress, and see how hot this poor CPU gets with this tiny cooler. That cooler worries me. And hopefully it installs fairly quickly, because I have to wait for things. Oh yeah, it's re-downloading all of the list of packages, because it's a live disk that's never probably been updated. Yep. Oh, and because I hit enter, it canceled it, because it's the default for things. Okay, yes, I trust. Just do it. So one tool that I really like is s-tui. It's in most of the major distros, and you get this interface that shows you temperatures, clock speeds, utilization, and power consumption on the CPU. And it's reasonably customizable, and if I have stress installed, I can hit stress, and it will go and tell me everything that's going on with the system. It's going to make it almost unreadable, unfortunately, on the stream, but I can also see it's pulling like 130 watts right now at 4.4 gigahertz. And let's play how long does it take to thermal throttle, because I'd be extremely surprised that this system, yep, nope, we dropped to 3.4 at 64 watts, which actually means it isn't thermal throttling, it's power throttling. And I guess since, to my knowledge, with this generation, you had, I think, the short-term power limit of 125 on these CPUs and long-term of 65, so that means this cooler is actually fine, because they limit your power consumption so much that it can't be fully taken advantage of. But it also means your sustained clocks looks like about 3.4. Isn't great. Which really is not great on a chip like this. Sometimes you can unlock it and let it run at its full like 4.4 boost all the time. But yeah, I can run it for longer, but since I'm on stream, I don't want to do that. But it looks like 62 on the core. I can hear it from here, but I'm also have a mic right here, so it's not bad. Actually, I expected a whole lot worse when it comes to temperatures on here, but I guess power limits are the problem. I'm curious when I go into the BIOS. Now, I guess the question is the motherboard artificially limiting it, or is that just Intel's limits and the motherboard's following the 65 watt limit? And I'm not exactly sure. While the VRMs on this motherboard are, I hate to do it when it's running, not super good cooling wise, I have seen motherboards of worse looking VRMs that have done better, and nothing kind of on first feel is hot enough, this isn't optimal, but to make me think that it's VRM power throttling. It's also such a short period of time that I really doubt it would have hit thermal equilibrium. Yeah, I think they called it tau as the time between the short-term power limit and the long-term power limit. Intel still has it. I've been bit by like laptops with it where it's like, hey, I need to like compress a video quickly. Oh, it's going to take 3 minutes. Not bad. Power limit kicks in. Oh, it's going to take 10 now or some longer period of time. That's annoying. Yeah. Because I think like arguably, like, oh, I might get some dislike for this, but like Intel's like modern CPUs are pretty power efficient if you run them at like 3 gigahertz or something. The problem is the performance doesn't look good. So if you want good looking performance, you have to run them at like 4.5 or 5 gigahertz, of which then they chew up power. And I think Intel and AMD, arguably too, with how power consumption's often been trending up, has decided to just push the CPUs to the max clock speeds and have efficiency really bad in kind of the desktop gaming parts typically. And even laptops, that's kind of one of my pet peeves with home server power consumption, is these CPUs will see, hey, you have a light workload going on, let me boost up to like 4.5 or 5 gigahertz, whatever my peak clock speed is, and have pretty bad efficiency in the name of doing that small task a little bit faster. So, yeah, it looks like it hasn't changed much. It's gone up to like 66 on all the cores, stayed at 65, which really makes me think it's a power limit, at 3.3 gigahertz now. Not great, but the CPU's slightly louder. I would have expected. And the heatsink's warm, but it's not bad. Yeah, I was expecting that CPU heatsink to get to 100 C really quickly and be obnoxious, but it's actually power limited. Okay. I don't have this CPU to, I don't have this graphics card. I can play with it. I could install the, I think I'd probably want to install it to disk, test the NVIDIA drivers, and push it. But from my initial gut with the graphics card, I should run a high load on it better to actually test it. But since it's outputting display, nothing looks weird. The chance that it being broken, I'd say, is fairly low. Yeah, I'd say agree with RCT. AMD has, in recent years, generally done a better way at doing its power throttling in kind of a competent manner. And I like kind of how the PBO branded system works. Instead of this, like, drastic, here's your high power, then it just kills it after a few seconds. But it's fine. I guess that's what they decided to do. So I guess the next question is what to do with this system. I could build it. When it comes to like building a home server or trying to do something else with this system, typically if someone came to me and says, hey, I want to turn an old gaming PC into a home server, I would typically recommend take out the GPU and use the iGPU. Unfortunately, not an option. I could use other GPUs if you want to try it. Like I have that 760 if you guys want to play with Kepler architectures. If you want to try something newer and see how it works. Oh, sorry for this awkward angle. I have, this is for another PC I'm building for another reason, but I have a 5060 laying around. Yes, I know all the hate those got. I can try that right now. I can use the 2060 in here. I have other cards too if you want me to pull them out. And then the other thought I have is cram as many drives as I can into a case to get the most out of it. The unfortunate part with trying to do something like that is this case has essentially 2 hard drive slots in this hard drive caddy that they give you, and unfortunately almost no cooling, and it's like limited and there's no fans down there, and no real other spots to put drives. I guess there's some spots for 2.5-inch drives on the back. There's no hard drive bays to put it like in an optical drive. I could just lay it on there, but in actuality, the annoying thing to me is that this motherboard has 8 SATA ports, so it would like work pretty well. I mean, I almost don't need one of these if I want to just put a few, more drives in the system, which is kind of awesome. The other thing I really like about this board is even though I have 1X slots, I can actually put 8X cards physically in it, which is actually kind of neat for putting like 10 gig NICs and stuff. And while I can't take full advantage of it, at least it fits. So yeah, someone said A380. We're going to put an A380 in it. I have an ARC A380. Cooler GPU, super cheap, does transcoding pretty well. You can transcode to AV1. They don't need any extra power, but that's not an issue here. And there we go. Hard drive wise, Oh, actually, I forgot to count it. How many SATA ports does this board have? 1, 2, 3 on this strand. That looks like 6. 6 total. That's fine. I can just toss it in there. That's ugly, but I can do it. It'll work. Internal drive. I have a slot for another M.2 drive on the system if I want to squeeze it in there. And someone please pick an OS, because I'm indecisive and want to try a different OS on this system and see how it goes. You know what? I'm curious. We're going to try an A380 for transcoding. The other thing, I'm going to find some hard drives to put into here to have some fun with and try to squeeze a few more in. And then I guess my next idea is what case to use. I have other cases if I want to pull them out that fit more drives. The problem is it feels weird putting... This board feels like it's kind of made for this case with all the RGB and stuff, because most of my boards, I don't get them with RGB because I just don't care. So, yeah, I guess it's kind of set up for that. Okay, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm down to doing just about anything. And yeah, CPU hasn't changed. One thing I will change, though, and just out of curiosity, is see if the motherboard BIOS has any options for power limits, and if I can configure those. Because I would love to be able to tune it to just essentially run it at max power all the time. And see how that goes. Come on. The other video I've been thinking of, I have a B570. It's currently in use, so I can't pull it out for this video. But I should do a comparison on B570s, because I'm curious how it'll work. At my initial testing, I think it's... I think the encoding core is slightly better, but it's not hugely better. The quality is like a couple % better bitrate-wise, but it's probably not something you'd notice on first glance. But now that we're in the system, let's take a look at the BIOS. Compared to like the Dell pre-builts, which give you almost nothing, this is not bad, I'd say. But we can load the XMP profile, which should run it at, yeah, DDR3 2933, which is fine. Gonna let it see if that has any issues. And then, am I still in the memory? CPU configuration, I guess it's under, let's see, boost performance mode. Oh, does it let me do base clock overclocking? It says it, but it makes me curious. Because to my knowledge... Oh, there we go. Oh. Oh. There we go. Yeah, short duration power limit, long duration power limit. Oh, what if I just put that 224 in there again? Nope, 125 looks like the max. And then what, can I just set this to like 99? Can I change this value? Oh, here, how high does it go? 224 seconds? Long duration maintain, short duration power limit, auto. So yeah, a dual tau boost. I'm not sure what that means. But if I'm understanding this correctly, long duration power limit's now 125 watts. So just out of curiosity, I can boot into Fedora again and hopefully run it at 125 watts all the time. If it's that easy, that might be a pretty easy power boost. I think that's it. The 125 watts, I believe, on the CPU is its short-term power limit. So it'll just let me run it, I think, 4.4 gigahertz all the time. One thing I am slightly curious about is, can the CPU cooler handle that? Because I think it might struggle. Yeah, this is almost certainly an SMR drive. I'm going to play with this a little bit when I throw it together. And then, because this system's booting, I'm going to go grab a few things off camera, because I thought it might be fun to try to max out all the hard drive spots on this case by using some of my 2.5-inch laptop drives. I have a pile of, I think these are designed for Supermicro, but it might just fit. And I have a pile of these 1 terabyte laptop drives that do fit in the SSD base. So, yeah, laptop drives. I'm curious if these will work. I've collected a pile of laptop hard drives over the years from systems I've SSD swapped. And yeah, they don't get used very much because 2.5-inch hard drives, in my opinion, don't see a lot of use. Yeah, I think you're talking about it struggling in reference to the, why is it not opening my terminal? It's interesting. Yeah, I think you're saying it's going to struggle in reference to the cooler. Yeah, I don't see this handling. Even if I do quick math, I think it's about 20 C in here. It's sitting at like 66. I'll say like delta T of 45 with that many watts. So if I double the wattage, 90 C. Yeah, that's going to be at 110. That's out of the comfort zone. That's going to be trying. Why is my terminal not loading with that? That's odd. Could still be booting though. So I got some drives. I could put in a different case. I can run around and see if I have a better case for this, but unfortunately, nah. I guess my dream case would be like an MATX case with a lot of hard drive bays for a system like this. Because it has the SATA ports. I don't have any systems though with a ton of bays that aren't in use. I'm gonna reuse the case because I think it has RGB and stuff, and that's gonna be the eventual goal. Just probably turn it back into a working gaming PC and flip it though. Where's my terminal? That's annoying. Okay, let me get a mouse for this system because I've somehow missed the whole mouse thing for so long. Okay, this system's not happy. I'm going to test this later and start reassembling it. As much as there's an argument for that it's better in a different case, I don't have one laying around that fits all those drives, and I thought it might be fun to just try it off with everything we have. So I'm going to be using this included SSD they have. Oh, that's annoying. I was going to put another SSD in, but they unfortunately don't have a... Unfortunately, they don't include the screw for a second M.2 SSD. I think I have some laying around, but I don't remember where it was off the top of my head. But luckily, I have adapters, so I can use these little adapters to run it in like an M.2 slot. And I think just for fun, I'm going to get one more different drive for my SSD piles to try it out in. So I will be back in 1 second. I'm gonna put the stream on hold for 1 second. I need to grab a few parts off screen, so I will be back soon. Should I want to put a message on screen? Yeah. OBS, let's do this fast. Text. Oh no. I'm looking at OBS, realizing it's putting it on screen live. I'm sorry for this poor video quality. I will be back as soon as I can. I'm back. Thank you for waiting. I'm back. Thank you everyone for waiting. I got a few parts to play with. I got some 3TB WD grain drives. Unfortunately, my piles of good hard drives are a little bit over, and I'm left to like a single 6TB WD red, not a bad, WD purple, not a bad drive by any means, but definitely a little bit older. 2 3TB WD greens, not great drives when they were new. Known for reasonably high failure rates because I think they had very aggressive head parking, which isn't that optimal. And some more like SMR drives, where it's just like, what do I use? And also just a huge pile of my 250 and 500 gig hard drives, which, again, I don't find to be particularly useful these days. It's in this weird zone of like technically not dead, but not super useful. So, I'm guessing this system... So this brings me to the question of, if I put this all back in the case and it works, what was the problem? It could be that something just needed reseating, because all the like performance critical parts are here and working, at least getting stuff on display, which it wasn't doing earlier. What it could be is it could be reseating stuff. It could be something with the case shorting things out or something like that. So I guess we'll find out when we put it back together what actually was going on in there. So let me unplug all of these connectors and start popping it back into its case. I'm going to set this aside and we're going to use this A380 for now. Once we try it with, you know what, I'll just toss Proxmox on it and see how it goes and do it. The other problem is, like, what do I do with Proxmox and a weird drive array? I guess I have a pair of 1TB drives and I'll use the 3TB drives and do like the ZFS like 2 mirrors. It works. Yeah, I hate using unoptimal drive setups, but with systems like this, it's like in my dream world I'd have all matching big hard drives, but you know what? It's not always the dream world when it comes to drives, so I think it is best to try to get everything I can onto the hardware I have access to. So many parts. So what else is left in this case after I've ripped it all out? Mostly RGB stuff, I guess. The cables for front panel, fans, and RGB for the fans, which is interesting because I never saw them glowing, which I'd expect them to be. More connectors. And that's about it. Okay, so let's see if I can quickly toss this all back together and see if it just posts put together. While there is like a bit of dust on the front panel, it's not, at least at first glance, bad enough that it should kill the system, or at least keep it from posting. So, it's interesting. Where are my screws? Here's some screws. I'm going to put all these power supply cables in here. I'm missing the zip ties. I'm going to re-zip tie it, or tie it up sometime later. But for right now, I think just kind of packing it in there is good enough. I've heard varying opinions on if you should use zip ties for cables in computers, because it can be a huge pain if you need to work on it, but I'm going to decide that it's fine for right now. I mean, maybe all it needed is just like a replug and reseat of connectors. I just hate troubleshooting, and that's kind of my result, because it feels like I didn't do anything. I like to say, like, oh, it's a dead part here, and that's why it wasn't working, whereas it's kind of like, it just needed a reseat, and now it's happy. I don't know. So the next question for like repurposing, if I wanted to reuse it, the thing is, as a NAS, if I really wanted to use this as a NAS, getting a different case would be my first goal or thing I'd try doing. I would be trying to get a case with more hard drive bays, because that's going to be my biggest limit when it comes to using the system as a NAS. If I wanted to use it as like a Plex server without internal storage, it's pretty much ready to go. I mean, the 2060 on its own is not a bad chip by any means, but I would love to have the opportunity to try something else. If I had the iGPU, I'd use it, but if you really want better streaming, like an A380 or A310 is pretty cheap, and like the 50 series GPUs also support quite a few streams and are relatively cheap with good codec support. But the ARC cards, like the A380s, they have pretty good encoding cores, and they're generally pretty cheap. Makes them kind of one of my first picks for, I want an inexpensive GPU to do encoding with. So I understand why they get that reputation. And also from my memory, they are plug and play on modern Linux distros, which is really convenient. And a lot easier to use than like NVIDIA's where you have to deal with their proprietary drivers. So that's probably enough cables in for now. These cables just feel kind of icky and cheap. What are these gauge? 18 AWG. I think that's about right. If anyone knows from memory what the normal wire gauge for like a CPU 810, but 18 seems in the ballpark of what you should do. The only other thing that annoyed me with this system when I was checking it out, yeah, this little standoff for the motherboard kind of fell off, so maybe it's there. Oh, when I was thinking, one other possible thing is it could be something on like the case shorting off or something like that. Looking initially at this case again, nothing seems to be off at first glance, but it might still be shorting off or doing something. So I'm just going to try a real simple build again and see if it happens to boot in its case. Oh, come on. In we go. I just had a thought if I could set it on its side, but at this point, why make it easier? Oh, it has one of those standoffs where they like stick out a little bit for one in the middle, so you can just kind of rest the board there and screw everything else in. That is actually kind of convenient for a likely cost cut down iBuyPower case. That's a nice feature they include. I'm guessing this is an iBuyPower OEM case. You get RGB LEDs, you get a window. I really don't like it. It has a fine mesh on the front. It's not really a filter, it's just a fine mesh and a very restrictive intake. Whenever I get to pick cases, I like picking the ones with the nice front meshes to hopefully get a bit more air in, because it's like, why put a window on the front if that's where the air is supposed to come from? I guess my only other kind of pet peeve with this case is the fans use these non-standard connectors that combine RGB and fans, so you have to use the fan hub to essentially use the fans, which again is part of the reason why I don't want to replace the case if I don't have to, because it's kind of like now these fans are all tied to this board. Slightly proprietary, but much better than what like Dell or HP. HP is actually okay-ish these days. HP, I think, is trying to be like essentially an iBuyPower where they're using ATX parts. Dell's continuing to full send. I've worked with some recent ones and it's like, yeah, that's not ATX standard. You're making up standards, but I guess it probably saves you a buck. Like one thing Dell likes to do is they have the motherboards, the motherboards have the front panel I/O connectors on them, so they stick out another inch or two, so they have the front panel I/O. I guess it saves them the connector of the front panel, but it's like, it just makes it more annoying. I'm curious, if anyone here works in IT and like does business desktops, do you guys buy standard like off-the-shelf Dell, HP, Lenovo systems, or do you do customs? Or like another smaller OEM. I'm curious what their decisions are. Because I haven't picked. Well, I've been mostly picking the pre-built systems when I work for that sign. I use just because it's one of these like, less trouble is probably nice, but it's not worth the effort. It's not worth the effort trying to fight for pre-built systems and possibly fix parts for less trouble. But also, it's kind of like, I don't like what they're doing hardware-wise. I'm like, why do I recommend systems that I don't like? So, last screw to put the motherboard in and hide my face. Yeah, OCT, the bunch of Dell and HP stuff. Yeah, that's mostly what I've been seeing. Yeah, I wouldn't pay my own money for them, but I guess I've always worked on a too small of a scale, but to my knowledge, I can also do big numbers, which, if you're DIYing it, but every once in a while, I do the math. I can build a system like this within an hour, and even at, like, relatively high pay rates for my area, that'll be cheaper than buying the Dell. Maybe I should try to do that one. The thing is, do I want to spend 10 hours building 10 business desktops is part of the question. And it's also one of these, like, if I build 10 business desktops, am I going to get burned if something goes wrong? And now it's like I picked a bad motherboard that happens to be a dud, but I don't know. Realistically, I've built so many of these custom chips that I doubt it's going to be a major issue. But yeah, so the current system, back to the current one that I'm building, it's almost back together. Oh, that 24 pin's up. I hope if they ever redo the 24 pin connector, I really hope they make it easier to put in one, because it just takes a lot of force at times, and I feel like I'm bending that board way more than I have to. But I got motherboard and its power in, so I'm now going to put the graphics card. I actually didn't test this system with the A380 on the test bench, but I'm guessing the A380 works fine. I'm trying to remember what was the Intel desktop gen when the A380s and those parts came in, but they should work fine. From my testing though, the ARC cards have had worse compatibility with like old, like first few gen Intel desktop systems than like an NVIDIA card from the same era. I'm not sure if that's just my experience with a couple of systems, or maybe even just a weird card, or let me know if you've had that experience too. Come on. Oh yeah, I should plug that connector. Yeah, that's generally my experience. Like, I mean, I know Dell and stuff knows how to build good systems, because like I've worked with those servers and stuff, and they're generally quite nice hardware-wise. But it's kind of like, I wouldn't mind if you did that with more of your hardware. But I don't know. I think the immediate thing every time you start doing pre-builts is you're like, why put in a nice power supply when you can have more profit? And I think that's kind of the debate everyone has to answer, because things like power supplies, people don't buy a system because it has a premium power supply, is my experience. So we're plugged in, we're turning it on. Here we go. Oh, there we go. So it is working on here. So I'm going to continue assembling it because I just wanted to double check that nothing that I've done so far would have bricked this little unit. A lot of cables. I'm going to try to do these quickly for the stream. I guess I can tuck the graphics power, and I'm going to try to just assemble these quickly. Now when it comes to other, I guess, fun things for server uses, hard drives. Oh, this really worries me with the amount of heat this might make. But I should be able to cram these two 3-tera drives into this case. This is going to have no airflow. That's not optimal, but it should physically fit. I've heard different numbers for like what the safe zone for temperature or like recommended for hard drives is. My general rule of thumb is 50°. If it reports over 50°, that's hotter than comfortable. I've ran drives at over 50°C for long periods, and they've generally been fine, but it's not what I'd like to be doing if I have a choice. So yeah. Oh, that's heavy. They do fit. There's almost no room for airflow. These are going to run toasty. That worries me. Let's go slide this in. And then what I'm going to do is I put that drive in. I'm going to plug those in. I was thinking I do have the SAS adapter, so I could have used some SAS drives I had laying around, but I think there's not enough clearance to put them behind the drives, if that makes sense. Because I can't just put the normal 2-pin ones in, so there we go. And then the other funky thing that a lot of cases do is, I guess these older ones do, they have this little back plate like this thing where I can put 2 SSDs or hard drives. Oh, it looks like it has the pins for a 3.5-inch hard drive, but there's no room for it. But I'm gonna just try putting 2 2.5-inch mechanical drives that I have laying around to see if they fit and work in here. Oh, I just realized those probably won't work because it only has right angle SATA connectors. Darn. That's annoying. Could see if I have any straight extension cables because that would be convenient. This would also be easier to add later on. I actually have an R230 RCT because you have your 240. I think 230 is 1 gen older. It annoys me that I have the 230 because in my opinion the 230 is one of the worst gens because it was essentially 6th and 7th gen on the desktop. Oh, I think it was V4 and V5 on the server, maybe V5 and V6, where it was the last of the quad cores. And it's like, ooh, I mean, it's not awful, but it's really annoying that the next gen systems, I think you can put up to 8 cores in. So it's like, that's really limiting and annoying to have that gen. It's like, Intel's at 4 cores for so long, and then they're like, oh, we have competition. We should go put like 2 more cores in per generation. That's really annoying, I buy power. So, let's not so the thing that kind of is annoying with this case is it has only these like crimp, or I guess press-on connectors. So they're all right angle. So if I'm using hard drive bays that are like this, that sit on the bottom, I can't easily cram these in there, which makes it annoying to power lots of drives. Which makes it really annoying, especially even if I was just to buy the prebuilt to add a second drive, because it has the caddy space for that second drive. So if I try to do it, and oh, this is not going to feel good doing so just because how tight it is. I guess the bottom one's fine, so I could just put the last one in here. And then I can squeeze in one more above it, and then run 2 SATA cables to these bays. The question then comes for this hard drive mount that would go on. I think the drives would go in like this. I could use Molex to SATA, but again, those probably aren't optimal. That sticks out fine, but I have to use at least one with an inline. And I hate to put force on the connectors because they're kind of delicate and you don't want to put force on them. But you could do something like that. You know what, we're going to screw the drives in and just see how tight the tolerances are. I really don't like putting tons of strain on it. Oh, did I say R340? I thought I said it's actually a 230 I had, which I believe is like, I think it's a nice 230, so it has 4 hot swap bays, but it doesn't have the better PCIe and stuff. But and it's also the 30 generation, which for the 30 generation, which had for the E3s only quad cores. I don't love. I'm so happy they've added cores now, because it's definitely been long enough to like take advantage of more than 4 cores for a lot of workloads. Oh, darn, these are the wrong thread pitch screws. No, I'm not going to bother with these. They're also only 1 pair drives, which is not optimal. So I got both those drives in. I'm going to find a SATA cable. I'm actually going to steal one from back here. And then I'm going to hook everything up and then toss OS on it. I think Proxmox is fun. I'm familiar with it. I could do GPU pass through the A380. The other thing I should do is like a container. I don't remember how to do a container off the top of my head and make it work right. I'll just toss an optane drive in. I have one laying around for fun too. and finish hooking the system up and call it a stream unless anyone else has any specific requests. So the back has 8 RCTs. So I'm just reading the comment. So the back has 8 SATA SSDs. Only have 1 SATA power. Lower spec. Have I done that? I don't. Oh, actually, I've probably built awful adapters like that before. From my memory, I think SATA can handle 3 amps. It's probably over spec, but there's a good chance that it can handle it without just falling apart. The other thing is, if they're not running high-end SSDs and pushing them, it's likely more than enough, because the SATA SSDs don't pull much power if you're not pushing them hard, especially like the later gen SATA SSDs that were running pretty efficient controllers and NAND and not pushing them hard like the NVMe drives are. I mean, if anytime I'm pushing power connectors super hard and I'm like kind of cautious, I sometimes just like put my finger on the connector and see if it's warm. If it's warm, I'm starting to get worried. But if it's not warm to the touch, it's probably fine. Because I think the biggest worry I have is it getting too hot thermally. I'm worried that the connector get too hot and have thermal issues. It's too much power causing like arcing when you're disconnecting shouldn't be an issue on a connector that stays plugged in all the time, which a SATA connector should be fine. Where was the fan header this ran to? Oh, I guess it can run all the way to the top and up here. This, again, probably another cheap thing. I guess they have a fan splitter on the back, but they don't have a lot of fan headers on the board. How many does it have? 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's a 4th one right next to the back. I guess that's fine. I've typically seen boards with more, but that's not the end of the world, I would say. And I'm just going to squeeze all the cables up here and start playing with it. My next question is, what other cards should I put into the system? I don't know. I have an Optane 905P that I think I pull out for these videos all the time. Unfortunately, I'm just going to take this off. Unfortunately, that means to save a buck on the case, these aren't normal PCIe slots, so you have to actually physically like break them off. And since I prefer not to do that, I'm just going to take the bracket off this SSD. Where's the right size screw? These are Proxmox. I'm kind of sad Optane died. I think it's still one of the fastest SSDs in QDEP1 performance. I'll have to check again, but I think it's still up there, and it's been like a 5-year-old drive or something. I think it was just one of these weird things that in the consumer market, they tried to make it make sense as a caching product. It doesn't make sense as a caching product. In the server world, it has its uses, but I guess they didn't sell enough, and it's, again, one of these weird spots where it's did not make sense to be between memory and NAND. I'm curious with Optane, with the Optane. Oh, that's. I'm curious with like Optane DIMMs. Could have Intel made them work as like generic DDR4 server memory? Because it only worked on certain Intel platforms and stuff like that, and I'm curious if it would have worked better if it was generic memory. But I can imagine it having problems, because I think if you used it as generic DDR4, it would have been, if you used it as generic DDR4 RAM, it possibly could have been like too slow and just caused weird issues. So I don't know. Because I know, at least Intel, I'm pretty sure, won't let you run a system on only Optane DIMMs. That's something else I've been wanting to play with one day, but it's also a tech that looks like it's died. I guess CAM's back, as essentially you can do like memory over PCIe, and it isn't CAM. No, it's not CAM. It's what's the spec for over PCIe? Oh, what's that spec for essentially memory over PCIe? I forget the name of it. That the new servers are implementing, but yeah, it's coming there. Yeah, Enterprise PM863 and 963As. 1.5 amps, so that would be quite a few amps. Also, I forget what those drives are. If that's on 5 volts, which a lot of, yeah, CXL, that's it. If that's on 5 volts, that's quite a few amps. That'd start to worry me. If that's on 12 volts, I think 33 watts is fine. The only other thought I have is because I think, if I remember right, some of those like PM863 drives, I think I might even have one laying around, are literally like 850 EVOs that are rebranded. I think I have one that I took apart and it literally said 850 EVO on the inside of the packaging. It's like, yep, that's a rebranded drive. Maybe I think they tweaked the firmware or something for some uses and enabled a few more features, but it was basically an 850 EVO. Some of those SATA SSDs like actually had more features and capacitors and stuff like that. Yeah, and I think the other thing is, as RCT said, is SLC NAND is catching up in performance to Optane and what it does. I think Optane probably had a lot of potential for better controllers, which it never got. And it couldn't have taken advantage of those faster controllers. I think the P5800X was actually a decent step up over the first gen like P4800Xs and 905Ps, but never found its way into the desktop products. It's still pretty rare and expensive, I believe. And yeah, it's not a bad part. It's just kind of a dead tech. And I think it's hard to justify whole different fabs and stuff for something that never really caught on. So here we are again. I'm probably going to play with this a little bit more, but it's not a bad looking system at first sight. I have 2 3-tera drives, and I just want to see if I can quickly get transcoding working on this system before I end the stream. So how do I want to position this to use it? I'm just going to position it here. I know Proxmox is competent enough not to do things if I don't want it to, but I'm still in the mindset of like, I don't plug in drives to a system when I'm installing an OS if I don't want it to be on those drives. So I unplugged my mechanical hard drives. I mean, I don't do that if I have a system where that's a pain to do, but if it's like these SATA drives where it's super easy or hotspot based, I just do it because it's easy in my opinion. Okay, talking about storage in Proxmox, one thing, I need to make a video on BTRFS and Proxmox. It's on my one-day list. Maybe I'll wait for them to take it out of Tech Preview. But since it is in Tech Preview, I've been in the mindset of why bother talking about it, because they haven't done it. From my other experience of just using BTRFS on desktops for fun, the way it does copy and write seems to be extremely slow for VM images. Compared to how well ZFS does it, which makes me very hesitant to like want to use it and play with it. I think, what is it? BTRFS has its advantages over ZFS. It's native to Linux, which is nice. It does some like mixed drive RAIDs things very well, which can be very nice. But other than that, I think it's kind of a hard sell when you have ZFS on a system like in Proxmox. It might be a better argument to go with it if you're worried about licensing, but Proxmox, they make it work. It's already on there. You don't have to think about it. So here we go. Let's toss Proxmox on it. It's a nice fun OS. Let's see. Network cable. Yeah, Proxmox and ZFS mirror was slower than a single drive. Are you saying like a single ZFS drive or just like a single other file system? I know ZFS can have some overhead that slows it down at times, which makes sense. I guess with the way how fast Optane is, I wouldn't be surprised if you're hitting other bottlenecks when you're writing to 2 drives that you wouldn't hit with one, just because it's so fast. It kind of shifts what's the bottleneck. To Spaghetti, glad you found the stream. I'm glad people learn Proxmox from me, and I need to do more Proxmox videos, and I'm glad they've been helpful, and I'm trying to do other fun things, so hopefully that's useful. I've been glad I've gotten a lot of comments that you've been helping me set up my Proxmox server, and glad I've been able to help many people with that. So many words and thoughts. I should end the stream soon unless someone has further ideas, but I'm just going to do a quick Proxmox install and see how it works on this system. It's weird it's not turning the monitor on. Oh. That explains it. The cable came out of my monitor. That's annoying. There it goes. Nope. Monitor going to sleep. That's annoying. Yeah, maybe I need to end this thing. Maybe I'll Google it, but one thing, ZFS is slower than just a directory mounted on a single P3800X. The one big question I immediately have with that is, what is the directory? Because typically, like, a basic ext4 setup is faster than ZFS, just because less overhead in my experience. And a lot of it's like ZFS has like better caching algorithms than Linux's built-in caching, but the thing is, it doesn't matter with something like Optane because it's almost so fast that RAM caching just isn't needed. Okay, so I'm in the BIOS. It's finally working again, which is awesome. Okay, Control-Alt-Delete. Let's go to the boot menu and hopefully boot into Proxmox installs on this system. Yeah, and one of these things, I'm gonna make a Proxmox series on clusters soon. That I kind of have the mindset on is it's like if you want to set up a cluster of systems using something like Ceph, there's a lot of overhead with Ceph, so it might almost be better to consider having ZFS and just cloning it every 10 minutes over the network than having Ceph, because local ZFS can be a whole lot faster than Ceph, and cloning it for 10 minutes is probably close enough to real-time data for a lot of people's use cases. Now, it definitely depends on your exact use case, and Ceph will give you much better resiliency if you lost a specific node data-wise. But if it's just the boot drive, it might be fine. And you could also do like a mix where you run basic boot drives and configs on local disks. So, here goes the Proxmox installer. Let's see how it goes. It's grabbing an IP. It's booting fairly quickly. Other video ideas. If you have more Proxmox ideas, I'd be interested in them, but I think wireless networking, I might play with it. I think they have a page on it, and I know you should use wired, but it's getting pretty easy to do gigabit over wireless, which is fast enough for a lot of uses, and I know some people constrained, so it's always nice to give people options when you have it. Spaghetti, I know you made a video converting a laptop with a Windows install into a Proxmox VM. Do you know if it's possible to do the reverse instruction? That might actually be fun to look at, converting a VM. I think I've done it. It generally should work, but drivers are a bit of a pain. I think like modern Windows and Linux handles it pretty well, but I might do a video actually going the other way of converting a Windows VM with maybe specific programs and configs into a laptop image. Yeah, turning a VM into bare metal. That might be a good idea. I might try that. I should do some testing. That's on my list. So, oh yeah, I left another NVMe drive. So, what do I want to use? I'm going to just use ZFS. I think there's... So, I always debate, should I use ZFS, should I not use ZFS as a boot drive for Proxmox? My thought is ZFS on a boot drive... Oh, that's odd. ZFS on a boot drive... on Proxmox gives you RAID support, which is really handy at times. But other than that, snapshots can sometimes be nice. And because performance doesn't really matter on boot drives, in my opinion, I typically go ZFS. One other thing here is they've added this option, I think a while ago now, where you can set arcmax size here, which is actually something that has come and bit me before. I have a system where I'm playing around with ZFS a little bit ago, added better ways of doing dedupe, so I was playing with that, and I was seeing huge performance hits when copying files to it, and I realized I had like 6 gigabytes dedicated to Arc, and I think on that system I had like a 30 plus terabyte dedupe volume. I was like, oops, it might be better, but it's still not good enough, and when I gave it like 30 gigs for Arc, it was really happy. I'm going to call it iBuyVM just for fun as its host name, and everything else looks like it's set up right. And it sees my network card, which is awesome. But yeah, so I'm playing around with ZFS dedupe. If you're curious, give me any thoughts, but ZFS dedupe's fine. I think it's a bit better. Yeah. I don't remember looking back at your comment about the optane drives, RCT. I don't remember machine. I tested ESXi. I think ESXi uses like VMFS or whatever they call their local disk file system. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. That sounds right, especially if you enable like compression and stuff. That can hurt performance a moderate amount with fast disks, because compression's often assuming you have slow disks and compression's faster, but with like NVMe drives, that's often not the case. And wow, it's an 11th gen system with a reasonably fast SSD. It can install fairly quickly. So it's awesome how fast Proxmox installs. One thing I should try with this hard drive is I'm just curious if it supports trim. I've seen, I guess it's older hard drives now that support trim on SMR drives to better allocate their disk space. But that doesn't seem too common now, which is kind of interesting, because I think my gut is that trim should help a moderate amount with helping it keep its buffer size big and have to shuffle around data less. But maybe they haven't been implementing it for some reason. I think I have it, yeah, there's an older installer, it's 8.3, but it should be able to update to 8.4 just fine. Also, if anyone watching happens to know, please put it in the comments or send me an email. I have a system where I think updating to about Proxmox 8.2, 8.3, it's an AM4 ASRock rack board with a 3900X, causes it to like lock up with systems. It works in the newer installers, it works with Proxmox 7 and like 8.2, but anything newer, not happy. And I was like, that's really weird. Took me a while to troubleshoot that. I was like, that's annoying. And it just sits at system DM. The whole system basically locks up and is unusably slow. And I was just like, that was an annoying issue to try to fix and get working again. Looks like we're almost done. Almost there. Cool. Reboot now. Let me unplug this, and then I'm gonna, I probably don't have pot swap enabled, but I'm likely be able to plug the 3 terabyte drives in. Spaghetti asked the question of what do I personally use Proxmox servers for? I have my personal like home lab system where I run VMs that give me services I like that's running on Proxmox. I have test systems, mostly for this channel, laying around, and just personal testing. Again, I've worked with companies that use Proxmox and set up those systems. There might be some small businesses I've worked with where I've set up Proxmox. But like, I know one that I'm using Hyper-V with just because it's a rest of it's Microsoft Stack everywhere else, so I'm kind of like, I gotta just stick with that at some point. It's fine. I don't love it, but it works. And I have not done, I know some of you have done big deployments, where you have like dozens or hundreds of Proxmox servers in a cluster. I've mostly not been able to do that big of deployments just because that's a scale I'm not used to. I've seen people and worked with people with setups that big. It's really cool to see. But it's also, getting access to that much hardware is kind of hard at times. But now that the system's installed, let me, oh my gosh, I can't type a password in. Reese Lewis, thanks for the hello from New Zealand. I hope you have a great day. I don't know what time it is in New Zealand. It's probably in the morning, so hello and thanks for getting up for this. It's always hard to plan things with like viewers from across the world because it's like 7 p.m. for, or like past dinner time for me here, but it's different times for everyone else out there. Just out of fun, if I do ping google.com, I think that should just work. Oh my gosh, I really should call this because I'm getting tired. Yep, that's working just fine. If I do app update, I'm guessing that will, yep, it's reading it. And then, I think this IP is on 207. Yep, it is, so I can actually pull out my desktop I'm working with right now and just do a little bit of testing and experimenting with it through a standard desktop to see how it works. So I'm gonna just move some stuff around on my table right now and make that happen. And use my different OBS scenes. I do love OBS though. Ooh. That's not light. Not light, not light. Okay, hopefully my audio keeps working. It looks like it has, and I have this system here. So PS 207. Let's see. Cool. Complains. Let me blow this up a little bit so it's easier to read on stream. Is the BIOS on that system up to date? Let me double check that. Power control. It could be power control, but it's really weird because I guess I never double checked performance, but the performance doesn't seem wrong. It seems like it's getting hung on something in like journal control and it just can't go. Like system D. I should have taken better screenshots. The unfortunate part is it's a semi-prod system that I really want running, so I can't afford... It's co-located and it's semi-prod, so I really can't afford just playing with it right now. I am probably going to come back to that system like a year later and see if it happens to be fixed, and I really hope it is. Because I was thinking it's like everything weird, because then I just did a fresh install, update it. I was like, oh, that's the problem. Cool. So super quick what I do when I have a new system. I'm not using a license on this system, so I'm going to disable these repos, add the no subscription one. I'm going to update it. I like using my own terminal for doing this. Instead of using the one built in, so I'm just going to do apt update. I could use the web one, I guess, and do it. And then just out of curiosity, take a look at the hardware. If I was to upgrade anything on this hardware right now, it's RAM. I think I have 2 sticks here. Here's 64 gigs of DDR4. That's what the system really probably wants to have. Otherwise, it looks fine. And I can do like an apt, you know, I'm just going to do apt install. I don't have the side case on, but I just want to see if that power setting, I think, stayed the 125 watt continuous. It's odd it's taken so long to read the database. But maybe these are larger installs. I'm normally used to this being super snappy on these newer systems. But apt is taking its sec. Cool. Otherwise, is it seeing my disks? No, it isn't. Oh, there's one of them. Alright, let me reboot it, because I think it should see 2 of those disks. I have 2 3-tier drives in this system that are working. I believe it should reboot really quickly, but I don't have a monitor on it right now to troubleshoot it. It looks like it has a working hard drive LED light, which is really nice to have. I love the hard drives because it helps me figure out, like, is it disk error limited and is it actually responding and booting when I don't have a monitor plugged in? But those have kind of been going away. Realistically, I'm probably going to... I should check BIOS settings, but it's weird the fans aren't lighting up with RGB at all. I'd kind of expect them to light. Because they're all plugged into their fan thing. The other big question this brings up to me is what was wrong with this computer? Because I pretty much just reassembled it and it worked. Maybe the RAM just needed reseating or some other connector, but everything else is working. I don't know. I'm going to just guess it's an old system that maybe just needed reseating, which I'm really happy with because I don't have to buy new parts for it. And it's now a working computer. But back to what I want to do. So I'm just going to run s-tui again on this system, go to stress, and I'm going to see, does it stay at those high power limits? I'm going to zoom out. It's going to make it hard to see, unfortunately, for the stream. But I want to see if power drops. I'm hearing that fan a little bit starting to rev up. And do I see more disks? Yep, I see these two. Looks like they're users. BTRFS. Oh, that's what I was doing with those drives, but I'm gonna wipe them now. Oh gosh, I built bad BTRFS arrays over time. Yeah, it looks like, I think it would have slowed down by now, but it's sitting at about that 125 watts, which is its sustained power limit, 4.4 gigahertz, just like earlier, and is at like 86C and continuing to rise, which is not working. So I'm gonna just wipe all of these disks. What? 90C. It's continuing to rise. I don't think that cooler's ready to handle that. And then the other window I want is just apt update and then apt upgrade to get it the latest version of Proxmox on here. I could do GPU pass-through. I believe this will work, and I can do it with a single GPU if I really want to. I'd have to get the monitor to do it, which I'd prefer not to do on stream. I could do a container. Let me just Google that really quickly. Let's see. Yeah, it works, but... Yep. I am not going to experiment with this right now, unfortunately. I could install it on the host, because it is literally just Proxmox running on the host. But I'm inclined not to try to do that. What else is there to play with very quickly? I'm unfortunately getting a bit more tired, so I want to finish this up soon. Oh, yep, we're at, okay, yeah, it looks like it's starting to thermal throttle. At 100C on the CPU, 4.3, so we dropped just a hair. And, yeah, so it looks like it's slowly dropping power because of power consumption. Okay, that's what I thought. So, yeah, as far as things go, if I was to set up this system and go beyond what it has, it's really nice as far as this goes. Actually, you know what, Spaghetti, I'll answer your question right now first and then put my thoughts together. So, does Proxmox need a graphics adapter? No, it should work just fine headless. I think Debian can do it so, and if you have systems that I think support like serial console boot, you can see it, and it will work fine. The reason I like to have graphics is some motherboards require it, which actually, let's try it on this board. I'm very curious. Oh, that's annoying. I can try it on this board and see if it needs it. The other thing is, sometimes you need it for the boards to post, and it makes troubleshooting so much easier, so I don't have to pull things out. The other thing I need to learn more about and make a video about one day is what often happens is, so yeah, you can run with no free GPU, like if you passed it through, and Proxmox just fine. The host OS does not need access to a graphics card in Proxmox. That's the simple answer. If your system doesn't have a GPU at all, I generally don't recommend that config because it's more difficult to work with, but if it boots, that can work fine. One annoyance I've seen that I need to make a video about, I have this list that I need to work on, is on a slightly related note, one annoyance with Proxmox, and I guess other Linux distros, to say the least, is the way it identifies network cards is via the names given to them in Linux. So if I go on my system under network, it sees these ENP0331F6. And that name, I'm pretty sure, is dependent on what PCIe device it is in like the order of PCIe devices. And the problem is that means adding a PCIe device or changing like which location that NIC is in can sometimes make it so it has a different name. So sometimes I've had cases where, since now storage is often NVMe drives, like this one here, or other NVMe drives, if I change the drives in the system, I can't access it on the network because the network card named it. I'm pretty sure there's a way to fix that. I need to make a video about it and do some testing because that gets very annoying at times. Once this finishes updating, I just want to see if the system happens to work. without it, and then I'll probably finish the video, because what I'm going to try is take out that ARC GPU, put just another PCIe device in, hopefully to keep that number the same, and play with it. What I wish they had support to do on here, on Proxmox, and I need to do it, is to essentially... Yeah, maybe they need to add that as like one way to do it, as like a dummy, just automatically add all. But I want to make it, I know there's a way to, I just haven't learned and done research on it, so that this name is tied to like the MAC address of the NIC. So if I change a slot or add a different device, it doesn't mess it up. That has really annoyed me when it doesn't boot. Yeah, onboard NIC and Ethernet, it messes thing up. The other, just if I have a Proxmox system and I'm doing a basic configuration where it's like one network and a virtual switch and I have multiple NICs, I typically take all of those NICs and put it into the virtual switch, so that way it doesn't matter which NIC I plug the system into. You can cause issues if you plug it into both ports by causing essentially a ring, which is bad, but not going to get into more advanced networking now. The other nice thing you can do is you can use it essentially as a switch to pass through from like a wall jack to the server to a desktop if you want to configure like that. So I often do that on systems where I have multiple NICs and I want to be able to just plug it into whichever NIC I feel like at that time without having to think through things. Oh yeah, I guess you can't see, but it's installing. Oh, that's interesting. Oh. Okay. I don't know if I controlled seated. But app upgrade seems to be having issues and going slowly. So one program I like installing on systems is Systat, because it contains the IO stat, but I can't install that. So it says cannot read, no data available. So first thing I'm gonna just run is df-h to make sure I'm not out of space. I am not. Oh, I hope this is readable on stream. I don't know what the zoom button is on the Windows command prompter. Oh, it's not. Newer terminal. Sorry, I can't zoom in easily. So then I'm just gonna go to like cd/, and I'm just gonna do touch test. That should make a test file on test. That's odd. Can't read. Can I do apt purge lib http-date-perl? I'm playing with stuff now. I'm trying to remove that package to maybe get it to reinstall. Oh, that's going to remove PV Manager. Nope, not doing that. Maybe I can just say install. Is there a reinstall? Yeah, it looks like... Oh, that's interesting. No data available. If I run into weird stuff like this, I like to just scrub the drive just to see if anything weird's going on. Looking back at comments. Oh, yeah. Especially trying to connect the system to onboard NIC. Yeah. Like a bond. Yeah, I think it's called a bond. I think some OSs call it a bond. I think it's a bridge here. It's essentially a layer 2 switch. I should play more PCIe pass-through on systems, especially now that PCIe pass-through has gotten pretty ubiquitous and supported well on consumer platforms like this one here. Back when people were starting to talk about it, it was like, oh, it's only server stuff, and it really doesn't handle it well. But let's see what's happening. Ooh, that's bad. That's very interesting. So it scrubbed my device and said there's a read and checksum errors, and that libperl data has an error, which is why it's not working. Which means that likely that SSD has problems, and I'm going to need to place it. One other video that's been in the works too long, I keep mentioning this, is like trying to fix old hard drives. I'm just curious if you can get them working again. But yeah, generally this drive's going in the dud bin. It's not getting used. This one just drives a goner. I don't think there's really anything you can do. Yeah, typically if the drives show any errors, but one thing I am curious about is if I go smart control-x/dev/NVMe 0 and 1, I think that's the right device on the system. I do have a second NVMe drive. Oh. No, it's 1 and 1. Oh, haha, I'm spelling NVME wrong. Don't do that. Okay, so it says it passed. Okay, so before I end the stream, I'm just going to be finishing doing that. I'm going to do... Let me run that test. I'm going to run just a quick internal smart control test on the... Oh, you know what? This system's borked. Yep. If I can't run, like, a man page or something, that drives. Definitely not happy. I can run scrub again just for fun, but... Nope. That's likely some of the issue on this system of why it might have been dead. Now, the other interesting thing when working with people is everyone has, like, a different definition of, like, dead computer. So... yeah, it could be no power output, which I originally saw, but also it looks like this drive is not happy and going in the bin for me. Thanks to Spaghetti, I definitely need to play with more GPU pass-through and PCIe pass-through. I'm really happy how gaming's gotten pretty good for when it comes to pass-through, and you can do it. Yeah, you need more GPUs, but other than that, it works on modern platforms kind of without an issue, which is awesome. And what's even easier is doing, like, SSD pass-through, because now you don't have that graphics layer to worry about. So it's almost just enable it in the BIOS. Set that one option, which quick Proxmox feature request. Please add it somewhere in the GUI here, like detect what the CPU is and add that boot option. I think that's a relatively easy thing to request for them to do and would be really convenient at times. And I think that'd be great for doing easy pass-through of the devices. So I am happy how good that is. And unfortunately, the one thing that looks like I missed is the SSD is not happy. It works for a little bit. I think I was commenting on the install seemed to be taking a bit longer. Maybe it's just the CPU is slightly older, but I think that drive is definitely a dud. Hello, Awesome Arizona. Thanks for joining the stream. Unfortunately, you're kind of at the end of it, and I'm wrapping it up now, but I'm glad you could make it for a little bit of it. I'm glad to see everyone joined and seems to enjoy these streams I do. I'll try to do them more often. Oh, just curious, is 4K stream something you care about? Or is 1080p just fine? I just need a 4K capture card and I could do it. If that's something that people would like, I'd be down for getting one. But it looks like this is one of those annoying SSD problems where the SSD says it's fine in Smart Control. I'm going to try running tests on it with another system. I'm just curious, Smart Test can detect problems. But if ZFS says that has errors and essentially the system's locked up, it's a dead drive. And the little hard drive activity light on the system is just blinking like that, which is really odd. Oh, is it limited to 720p? I should be giving YouTube 1080p content, though. Oh, my attention span's gone. But, yeah, I believe I'm giving YouTube 1080p. Yeah. But, yeah, generally that's the thing I've seen. People don't care about resolution that much. But if people wanted 4K, I can do it. Yeah, it should be. I mean, it's 10 megabit, but yeah, I should have a 1080p monitor, so 1080p works for those streams. Again, thanks everyone for joining on the stream. Hopefully this is exciting, and I'm going to try to do more live streams when I get projects like these. It's always a big, I don't know what's wrong with this system, so it's at, playing around with, setting up systems and other things, and I guess the result is it's a dead SSD, and reseating things got it to boot up fine. And fortunately, SSDs are pretty cheap, and I have extra, so it's pretty easy to just swap in another SSD and make this a working system. RCT, yeah, 720p. The thing is, in my opinion, 720p is not a lack of resolution. It's just they compress it so much on YouTube that, like, you need 1080p if you want to see the better details. But again, thanks for everyone. I'm going to try to do more streams, hopefully in the future. Let me know if there's a time you want. Leave comments. I try to read all of them, even if I don't reply. And I'm glad I got as good a turnout as I did on this stream. So thank you again for everyone for coming. And hopefully you have a great rest of your evening or whatever time it is for you now. My voice is dead after 4 hours, after 2 and change hours streaming too. Thanks again. I'm going to end it now. Bye.